Are you a rock believer? Of course you are. And so are German rockers, the Scorpions, who have just released their 19th studio album. An amazing 50 years after the release of their debut album, Lonesome Crow, that was released obviously in 1972. But what's it like? And can it recreate the buzz and excitement of albums such as Blackout and Love at First Sting? Keep on watching to find out. Welcome back to Rockers Beer Review. Today we're reviewing the latest album by German veterans the Scorpions, who amazingly have released their first album in 50 years. And even though both singer Klaus Meine and guitarist Rudi Schenker are in their 70s, they show no sign of slowing down. So, the album itself. This is the first Scorpions album to feature their Swedish drummer Mickey D, and it also features relatively old hands, Polish bass player Paweł Masłowda, I'm not sure that's pronounced correctly, and of course lead guitarist who's been there since the late 70s, Matthias Jabs. It's their first album in just over 7 years since the return to Forever, which actually marks the longest gap between albums from the band. Although this album was started in 2019, the pandemic slowed production, which was originally going to be made in Los Angeles, but instead was produced in their home city, I should say, of Hanover in Germany. The band wanted to make the album like their classics from the 70s and 80s, with everyone being in the same room at the same time. Obviously, the album delayed by the fact that their Polish bass player and Swedish drummer couldn't all get to Germany to be there together. But they eventually managed it, and they managed to lay it all down as a group, as I said, in their home city of Hanover. So what do we have? I'm going to review the big deluxe version, which includes 16 tracks. But the big question, of course, that everyone wants to know is that can the Scorpions, after 50 years, still rock? Is there still life in these old dogs? Or have we got an album full of sappy, slow, boring ballads? Well, to start with, there is only one ballad on this album. It's definitely an album which is much more rockers rather than ballads, which in my opinion is a very good thing. The King of Riffs is back in town. This is what Klaus Meine screams on the opener, Gas in the Tank. And it shows there's still plenty of energy and plenty of life in these old rockers, with references to Trans Ams and Slam Bam, Thank You Ma'am. This is not going to win any sort of prizes for great literature. Okay, they try a little bit too hard, but they still know how to rock. Klaus also sings, let's play it louder, play it hard. There's going to be more gas in the tank. It's a great start to the album, though. Certainly brings out the sort of big rock anthem that you expect from a band like the Scorpions. And as I said, although lyrically it's not Shakespeare, with all the shit that's going on in the world, it's a welcome relief just to let your hair down and rock, just to try and forget that this is a crazy world that we live in. Also, you've got to try and remember that these guys are 70. They're old enough to have a bus pass, but they're still rocking out and showing the younger generation how to do it. Second track on the album is Roots in My Boots. It's another high energy rocker, which is a typical Scorpions song, talking about how rock and roll was in their blood. Lyrically, it reminds me a little bit of the All For One from their last album, Return to Forever. Knock 'Em Dead, that's track number 3. It still keeps the energy, but it slows it down a little bit, slows it down a touch. It's more of a sort of into a more mid-pace rocker. The main riff reminds me a little bit of Can't Live Without You from their classic album Blackout. which, you know, any reference to those older songs is always a good thing. Rock Believer, track number 4, is the song that we've heard before. It was the first song that they released. Obviously, it's the name of the album. It's another one of those sing-along anthems that Scorpions are so famous for and so good at writing. And I'm sure this will be a great live track. Then we get two slightly differently paced songs, and in my opinion, probably the best 2 tracks on the album. So first we have "Shining of Your Soul." Again, this was one that has been released fairly recently. It's a mid-paced rocker, but it's with its sort of swirling reggae-like riff, has sort of echoes of classic song "No One Like You," but it definitely stands up on its own as another modern classic by the Scorpions. It's got a great Matthias Jabs bluesy solo, and it's probably worth mentioning that all the lead playing on this album is absolutely brilliant. He's at his top of his game, Matthias. There's lots of little lead flourishes that he's famous for, and great brilliant solos. The next track, which again is a favourite of mine, is "Seventh Son." It's probably as close as you get to a Scorpions epic. You know, it's only sort of 5.5 minutes long, but it's a bit more mid-paced and it's a bit more epic in its sort of proportions. It certainly reminds me more of tracks like "China White" from Blackout again, and also "Animal Magnetism," the actual track from that same titled album. It's a great one though, and I think Klaus really is on top form vocally on this song. We then go back to those sort of more fast-paced rockers. "Hot and Cold" hits us between the eyes with a fast-paced riff and a typical sort of tongue-in-cheek lyric. Then we have "When I Lay My Bones to Rest." Again, rocks out and is lyrically a real sort of like "All for One and One for All" about the band's sort of camaraderie over the decades really, and shows that when it is time to stop, when it is time to sort of lay their bones to rest, as it were, they would have had a pretty good run, and they certainly knew how to rock through those 50-odd years. Then we have "Peacemaker." I think actually when I say that "Rock Believer" was the first track, I think "Peacemaker" was actually the first song they released. And I'm sure it's going to go down as a Scorpions classic. I think it's really gets the point over really quickly. It's just about 3 minutes. It's a really snappy little song, but it shows that after all these years the Scorpions can still write a great pop rock tune. It's also the only song where Pavel, the bass player, gets a writing credit, as the majority of the tracks are written by Rudi Schenker, who writes most of the music, and Klaus Meine, who writes pretty much all the lyrics. The penultimate track on the sort of standard 11-track album is called "Call of the Wind." And I think here, this is the Scorpions, they change it up quite a bit. It's a more of a slower pace. It's very sort of 70s sounding. It brings back memories more of the sort of Uli John Roth era, with a lot more sort of psychedelic sort of sound and a sort of extended guitar playing and guitar solos. It's a good change of pace though, and I think it's it works really well on the album. It slowly builds, and there's a great sort of outro solo. There's some of those woo-woos in it as well that remind me a little bit of those other aging rockers, the Rolling Stones. It's not quite Symphony of the Devil, but it's pretty damn close. Then we've got the last track on the on the standard album, and it's the obligatory ballad. Now, the Scorpions over the years have always written absolutely great ballads. They really know how to write a ballad, whether it's the sort of real classics like "Holiday" or "Still Loving You," to the more cheesy, although obviously very successful, "Winds of Change" and "Send Me an Angel" from the Crazy World album. But when you know where you come from is the name of this track, and it doesn't quite hit those highs, but it's another great sort of wave your lighter. Well, I mean, that used to be wave your lighter. Now you're gonna wave your phone in the air when they play it live, and to me it does get better the more times you hear it. So now we're going on to the sort of bonus tracks. Now, sometimes some of these bonus tracks on the deluxe versions of albums are not really good. But the first one, Shoot to Your Heart, it's got a great guitar riff and it's a very worthy track. Then we got Tomorrow Never Comes. It's slightly different tack. It's quite heavy, both musically and to some extent lyrically. Klaus talks, "Good morning, world. How do you feel? You look so tired." The song is obviously more about the climate crisis and our impending doom, and it's a marked difference from the usual sort of lyrics about rocking out and having a good time. But I think this is one of the best songs on the whole album. I think it's a shame that it's not on the main sort of standard album, because I think it's a really good track. So yeah, disappointed that it's sort of been relegated to the deluxe version, but hopefully a lot of people will get the deluxe version. Then we got Unleash the Beast. It's a song which, again, it should have, I think some of these bonus songs or extended songs are pretty good. It should have been on the main release. I can't be sure exactly what it's about, but it may be even about the current pandemic. Klaus sings about a super spread that kills all of us, and I'm not totally convinced again. But though it's definitely a step change lyrically and to more serious sort of content, and that's very welcome to my opinion. Then we got Crossing Borders. It's the last of the sort of new song, as the last track, the 16th track, is an acoustic take on the ballad when you know where you came from. So Crossing Border though has a more sort of bluesy, almost a southern country rock feel to it, and it's also again it's the only song which Matthias Jabs has got a writing credit for, both for the instrumental music side but also lyrically. It's a good song, but you feel it's another one of those sort of songs about being a rock star, playing gigs, crossing the borders, as it were. And the Scorpions have always written songs like this about being on the road, about playing live, and whether it's from the sort of earlier albums to even sort of the even recent ones as well. So it's something that they've written before. So, but it's still a good track, and it's nice to see the Matthias Jabs getting a song credit. So that's the album. In my opinion, I think it's a really great return to form. I think it's superior to their last album, Return to Forever. In fact, if I consider the whole album as the full 16 tracks of the deluxe album into account, with those great bonus tracks, I'd even say it's probably their best album of the 21st century. It's no Blackout or Love Drive or Love at First Sting, but it's definitely comparable to things like Crazy World or even Savage Amusement. And Savage Amusement is one of my favourite albums, so that definitely means that this album comes highly recommended. Whether you're a fan of the Scorpions or just like hard rock, I think you'll definitely enjoy this album. But what do you think? Have you heard it already? Is it as good as those past records? Am I being a bit biased because I'm just a big fan of the Scorpions? If you've already heard the album and you've given it a few spins, then let me know what your favourite track is. Do you think that there's a song on there that's going to be one of your favourites, and which ones are you really looking forward to seeing them play live? So I hope you've enjoyed this review of Rock Believer by the Scorpions, the latest and pretty greatest album. Let me know what you think, and that's it for today. Until the next one, don't forget what you need to do. Keep on rocking.